Hey guys, what's up? It's Biscuit Horror Reviews. I'm here with a Blu-ray, DVD, vinyl collection update. It's been over a month since Cinema Wasteland, and I haven't bought much since then. Um, just a couple things here and there that I've managed to come across for good prices, or some things I bought off somebody in one of my Facebook groups. As for the lighting, this is something I kind of want to try. Um, a bit of aesthetic, a bit of colorful lighting, because you guys know how much I love that shit in movies. Gonna try to work it in. If this doesn't work here, then maybe I'll work on it more, or I will, only do it with reviews. I'm thinking about it mainly being a feature for reviews. Either way, I start with the Blu-rays and DVDs. Guy in my VHS group on Facebook, he is pretty damn good with bootleg Blu-rays of titles that are just not available in the US as of yet. And the first thing I got from him is the Quentin Tarantino film Kill Bill. Now, this is on Blu-ray in the US, but this is the extended 4-hour-long whole bloody affair cut of the film. This is the complete version that Tarantino wanted to release, but he had to cut it into 2 movies because there was so much there. Haven't watched this yet. The Kill Bill movies aren't really my favorite Tarantino films, but they're entertaining nonetheless, and I've always wanted to check out the 4-hour-long version to see if it is in any way better than the separate films. So yeah, as far as I know, this is taken from the German Blu-ray, or one of the foreign Blu-ray releases, because everything on the back here seems to be in German. I know you can't see it, but take my word for it, it is in German. But don't be confused, this is a bootleg, this is not an official release, but still, not bad at all. Next, I got Brain Dead on Blu-ray. This is the full uncut version of Brain Dead. Again, this one I know for a fact is sourced from the German Blu-ray. Again, can't really see it too well, but it is in German. Either way, this is the full, hour and I think it's like hour and 103-minute long cut of the film. This version has never been released in the US for some reason. I have no idea why. But I know that like the DVD release from in the US that Lionsgate did a very long time ago, as well as their Blu-ray release of it, which went out of print very quickly. I know both of those were running at 97 minutes, which they were missing about 6 minutes of footage. Most people don't know that that this version is yet to be released in the US. I don't think this is going to get a nice US Blu-ray release anytime soon, or maybe it will. Either way, I bought it just because I wanted to have this in the meantime. Next, we got Matango, Attack of the Mushroom People. This is another one. No release in the US, which really sucks. This movie's directed by the guy who directed the original Godzilla in the early 50s. This is his movie from the, I think, early 60s, about a group of people being shipwrecked on an island, and they are kind of one by one kind of picked off by an unseen force, and some of them start to mutate, and essentially, yeah, they turn into mushroom people. And I guess this movie was originally banned in Japan because some of the special effects they did for the characters mutating into mushroom people looked very similar to what the survivors of the bombings of Hiroshima looked like. So that's interesting to know. Another one, Let's Scare Jessica to Death. This one I covered on my channel, actually, not too long ago. This is just a BDR, again, bootleg, nothing special here, version of the HD master of Let's Scare Jessica to Death. Last I checked, the DVD wasn't in print in the US. Again, last I checked, maybe it is still in print. Either way, I know there's not a U.S. Blu-ray of this movie, and this is a pretty cool, great little 70s horror flick that I'd highly recommend. Next, we got Inframan. This is a really wild, bizarre Shaw Brothers film from the 70s that was made by the same studio that produced the live-action Kamen Rider series. I don't think that translates very well to the kind of audience I have, being a very horror and exploitation. But essentially, this movie is like a absolutely gonzo, balls to the wall action fantasy horror film about a man who becomes a bionic superhuman um, through a suit that he puts on, and he becomes Inframan and goes out and fights like monsters that are really cheesy costumes. Either way, this movie is absolutely fucking bananas. Love, love, love this movie. Surprised it does not have I don't even think it has a DVD release in the US. Or no, it does. But this is apparently from the 2K scan, this version. Next is the only film I bought that I haven't actually at least seen in some shape or form. It's the Michael Mann film, Keep. This is one of those famous movies that's like, the director wanted to make it a certain length, wanted to do something very specific with the plot and everything, and the studio said no. Essentially, Michael Mann, when nowadays, Michael Mann, he doesn't want people to remember or care about this movie at all, which in turn has made people want to seek it out. But originally, the film was going to be 210 minutes long, something like that. The studio came in and told who was it? Paramount? Yeah, Paramount came in and told Michael, look, that's a bit long, and they cut the film down. It performed poorly at the box office. Nobody saw it, and it got very negative reviews for being very choppy and cut up. I do not know exactly which version of this there is. I forget how many different cuts there are of this movie. I'm pretty sure there's just the DVD cut, there's the theatrical cut, and then there is the original cut. The original cut is, as far as I know, deemed to be lost. The theatrical cut, from what I've heard, is this version. It's a 2K scan of the theatrical cut. The DVD version that got released previously and went out of print was I think that one was cut by a couple minutes compared to the theatrical version. I do not know all the details on this one specifically. I mainly grabbed it because it was relatively cheap, and I've always wanted to check this one out. It's been one that has been on my radar for a while. Finally, we have another title that I've reviewed, actually. This is Eating Schoolgirls Osaka Telephone Club. This is a movie I reviewed almost 2 years ago. Despite the cover being, like in the style of anime, this is not an anime film. This is a live-action, hour-long, kind of semi-pornographic, splatter, horror, crime, dark comedy film. I can't remember the exact plot, but I remember it has to do with these two guys who go out and they essentially just kind of rape and slaughter women. And I know there's something to do with women calling a specific number, and that's how they track down the women, I think. I can't remember exactly. I don't remember giving this one a glowing review or anything specifically, but I do remember this movie being at least decently nasty and, grotesque, and that's something, I can get into, especially for a collection that I have like mine. That's it for the Blu-rays and DVDs. On to one little piece of extra, bullshit that I have. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of metal music, and I already have the Iron Maiden This is the empty can of the Iron Maiden Stout, and I have a few of the pint bottles of the Iron Maiden Trooper beer, all different versions of it, and I have those sealed. This is something else I'm gonna keep sealed, most likely, just because I'm not a very big beer guy, but at the same time, it's a cool little collector's item. I think this is made by shit. I don't want to say the company this is made by and be wrong, but at the same time, yeah, okay, yeah, no, I think this is it. It's brewed by Arrogant Bastard Ale, and this is Enter Night. This is the official Metallica beer. It's a Pilsner. Like I said, not a very big beer guy. Pilsners ain't too bad. But, you know, I like the design. It's got their fucking, kind of, like, devil that they have on the can. I've also never had anything from Arrogant Bastard Ale. I know it exists. So, that's just something that's just going to go up on the shelf. Now onto the records. And we are going from, you know, Osaka Telephone Club and the Metallica beer to something a bit more classy, maybe not classy, but a bit more classic and a bit more chill. I have Abbey Road on vinyl. People might not know, but I'm a fan of the Beatles. Then again, who isn't a fan of the Beatles? Yeah, there's some controversial stuff about specific members of the group, and while I don't think they're the greatest band in the world, I do think that this album, as well as Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, Magical Mystery Tour, and Rubber Soul, like, those ones are absolutely amazing albums, and these albums are like legitimate classics. You can't deny the, you know, iconography of this artwork at all. Like, this, like, people, like, you wear a shirt with just this image on it, people know what it is. That's you know, the level we're at. Still, I love, you know, I really enjoy the Beatles music, and this is definitely, you know, one of their best albums. Not my favorite. I'm more of a Sgt. Pepper kind of guy. But yeah, the Beatles, you know, because believe it or not, I listen to music that is not just punk rock or heavy metal. Now into some metal records. Next we got Metallica's debut, Kill 'Em All. Scored this for like $20. I was surprised to find this for $20. This is obviously this is a reproduction. I don't like to buy older albums, older vinyl albums, just because they tend to be used copies, and, you know, after a vinyl has been listened to, after you've played a vinyl so many times, it has some, the audio quality changes, definitely, and it definitely gets worse. So, I don't have a problem buying, you know, repressings, as long as they're pretty decent quality. And this is a good quality repressing. I've already listened to it a couple times, you know. Got the lyric sheet. But, yeah, this is actually probably, I want to say, my third favorite Metallica album, behind Master of Puppets, which I think is their masterpiece, and Justice for All. This is still a really great album, and again, a very iconic album, and it's a very simple, like, I love the cover art to this album because it's very simplistic, and just gets straight to the point. It tells you what kind of album it is by the cover art, and that's great. You know, this album has aged pretty well. I think it's a really good thrash album. Next, we got two albums from one band that only released, I think they only released about 5 albums. They don't plan on releasing any more. But out of those 5 albums, I can't say they have a single bad album or song. And that's kind of impressive. I'm talking about System of a Down. You know, out of all the alternative metal and kind of, new metal. I don't want to call System new metal necessarily, but out of that era of like early 2000s, late 90s metal, a lot of that music has not aged very well at all. I go back and I listen to old Korn albums, and I listened to, what was it I listened to? I listened to like Iowa from Slipknot, and I've got to say, other than the fact that it made me nostalgic for my high school years, I couldn't sit there and say it was good or enjoyable. It just made me think, man, I remember when that one time I was listening to this song in high school, when I was doing this specific thing or working on this project. But System of a Down, on the other hand, has maintained like its listenability and poignancy despite its age. This album came out when? I don't want to have to, put on some fucking glasses. I don't have to put on glasses for this fucking album to find out what year it came out, but I'm pretty sure this was like very early 2000s. I think this was like 2000, anywhere from 2000 to 2002. Either way, for an album that is this old, nearly 20 years old, it's aged very, very well, very listenable, and still very enjoyable, and again, iconic as hell when it comes to, this kind of music. And as far as, radio metal bands, they still get a decent amount of airplay, and they hold up pretty well. A lot of radio metal groups end up, if you enjoy them at one point in your life, you might go back and listen and be like, oh, this is actually really awful. Case in point being bands like Slipknot or Korn. But System of a Down has aged very well. Next, we have another System of a Down album. My second favorite album. That one, Toxicity, is like my third. This one's my second. It is Mesmerize. This is part of the dual albums, Mesmerize and Hypnotize, which Hypnotize is my favorite System of a Down album. I think it also contains some of their strongest work. As far as, musically, as far as lyricism goes, and as far as political and social satire goes, because you listen to this album and listen to Hypnotize, and they're very similar in their kind of layout of songs. There are a certain number of heavy songs, and there are a certain number of a bit slower, more calm kind of songs. It's not like Toxicity, where, let me just triple check here. There isn't like a single, chill or at least light, or at least kind of light song on this album. There aren't any that I can think of. Maybe Needles or maybe Aerials, but those are very big pushes. This album, on the other hand, it features Sad Statue, Old School Hollywood, and Lost in Hollywood, which for two of those three songs contain some heavy moments, but I think overall those three songs are relatively, less, they aren't as heavy, they aren't as loud and angry, and that's something I really enjoy about these last two albums. Mesmerize is really great, and honestly, there are some days where I prefer Mesmerize over Hypnotize, but Hypnotize has Holy Mountains, it has, what does it have on it? Considering that's one of my favorite metal albums, you'd think I'd remember, but Holy Mountains, the title track Hypnotize, it has Kill Rock and Roll on it, which is an absolute banger. You have, shit, I can't even think right now. I think I'm just trying to drag this video out as long as possible, aren't I? Oh, it's gonna kill me once I remember what song I'm thinking of. Soldier Side. It has Soldier Side on it, which is great. That being said, though, their last two albums, I think they left on a very good note before breaking up. As you might know, the band is back together now. They don't want to release another album, which I can respect that they don't want to, in fear of it might not be as good as their earlier stuff, which is a very legitimate fear to have, because as you see with a lot of metal groups, their older music tends to be better than their newer stuff. Either way, that's it for this one, guys. It's Biscuit with Horror Reviews, signing off. Peace.